Well, Callum, welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses, and welcome to all of those of you tuning in, whether it's via audio or video. Here we are, Callum, yet more away day disappointment to discuss. It is now just 5 points out of a possible 39 for Aberdeen on the road this season, as Livingston recorded their first win over Aberdeen in West Lothian since 2004. A 2-1 win, and to be honest, I feel it was a deserved win for Livingston.
I mean, yep. Literally, there's no other way we could put it, basically. We were absolutely abysmal. I think that stat about their first win against us down there since 2004 is very telling. And if that's not told you enough, Stuart McCombie left at half-time. One of the boys I was with left as soon as the second goal was scored. It was just awful. We are disgraced, aren't we? It's really bad.
I mean, our home form's been impressive this season. Well, certainly of late, but our away form has just been nothing short of shambolic. And, I'm not surprised folk were leaving at halftime, because it was quite audible after about half an hour how the away end were certainly feeling. But, you could argue the game was marred by what, let's be honest, was an atrocious refereeing performance. I'm sure the Talk Livi guys will be saying the same on their podcast as well. A match that was marred by 13 yellow cards and a dodgy red card. Kevin Clancy, now in his last 4 matches, has dished out 35 yellows and 2 red cards. Whether that 8-page dossier from Rangers has really affected him, or he's just had a terrible few weeks at work and he's dishing it out and getting revenge on the playing field, who knows?
Abysmal. Apparently, allegedly, not even a good lawyer in his full-time job either. So, oh God, he's awful. It looks like he wants to cry all the time. It was 13 bookings is mental in a game, and the red card, as much as I was happy with it at the time, having seen it back, why? What? No need for that, but
yeah, a second booking for Montano, but I don't even know that he really touched Bazawin, if at all. But when Callum, the team news came out, what was your feeling around that Aberdeen team? Gary Woods replacing the normal number one in Joe Lewis, who took ill the morning of the game. We saw Adam Montgomery coming in to make his Aberdeen debut, unsure of where that would be, but looked when the teams kicked off that he was playing in the more advanced role of left midfield, with Johnny Hayes starting in at left back, taking him up into the all-time top 40 appearance holder for the club. Ross McCrory in his 50th appearance for Aberdeen, captaining the side. Teddy Jenks replaced Scott Brown, who was rested. And Dylan McGeoch also dropped to the bench as well from Tuesday's starting 11. It felt like we were really mixing things up, that it was almost a bit of an experiment.
A little bit. I mean, first of all, I was terrified that Gary Woods was going to be in goals. I think probably McGeoch's probably, as you told me for sure, probably to do with the pitch. Scott Brown maybe being rested ahead of the run of fixtures. However, he probably could have been doing with him in middle of the park. Sort of forgot Jenks was playing.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad. I mean, congratulations to Jonathan Hayes, maybe one of the couple, if not just him, with pass marks for the game. It was atrocious. I was quite baffled when the team came out, and then, watching the game didn't help things.
No, but it's funny how you said about Jenks there. That's what I've got written in the notes as well. Anonymous, much like the first 45. The last time we went to Livingston, I felt he was very much anonymous in that first 45, hooked at halftime on this occasion. But, we spoke off air about Dylan McGeoch not featuring due to the pitch, or certainly not starting as a result of the pitch. There was a lot of people with comments, Adam Montgomery's hindering Jack McKenzie's progress because he's starting, well, he was actually playing in left mid. Jack McKenzie's not a left mid. But I also think as well, similarly to McGeoch, McKenzie also didn't start the game due to the fact of the plastic pitch. Talk Livi boys, we're not blaming the pitch at all for this defeat, don't worry. But if McKenzie was deemed not fit enough, or the pitch was of concern for him not to start, he still managed 45 minutes in that second half. So it can't have been that much of a concern.
You wouldn't think so, but that would probably suggest that going into the Celtic game that he might be okay, and probably with Montgomery, well, not probably, definitely he can't play, then perhaps we'll maybe see him come in. But I mean, that's maybe another positive Mackenzie played for 45 minutes without being injured. I mean, we're really scraping the bottom of the barrel here, aren't we?
Very much so. And I think, the game itself was, you'll know yourself, obviously having been there, it looked absolutely terrible on the coverage, the conditions. But Aberdeen started brightly. Funso Ojo, his snapshot from about 20 yards, sailing harmlessly over the post, and if not out of the stand. And really that should have been a sign of things to come, how bad that shot was in relation to how bad our afternoon was going to be. Because just 5 minutes later, Aberdeen found themselves 1-0 down in quite comical circumstances. Livingston dealing with the conditions better, winning a free kick out wide on Aberdeen's right hand side, and Aberdeen, as we've done very much so, struggled defensively. We couldn't clear our lines. The ball falls to former Aberdeen striker Bruce Anderson, whose goal-bound shot was quite instinctively finished by Obalai, the centre-back, continuing his fine run of goal-scoring form with a flick over Woods and the flailing Christian Ramirez, who I think was very much caught out by the fact the ball was looping over his head, not coming towards his feet.
I think so. I mean, some credit to him. He tried.
Absolutely.
But Obalai, has to be said, fantastic finish. Seam Glass, sign him up, play up front. That was unbelievable. But prior to that, obviously, not dealing with set piece properly. Bruce Anderson having the time and space to get that shot off. No one really taking the onus on them to deal with it. And then it flicks up perfectly for Obalai with that brilliant finish, has to be said. And this is due to pre-match antics. I can't quite remember whether the Ferguson potential penalty, which should have been a penalty, was before that or after, but that's another thing Kevin Clancy totally missed. Is official to about a Stonewall penalty as they come, and no, turned down.
It was very much after we'd gone 1-0 down.
Okay, couldn't remember.
I'm glad it's your turn to have your memory obscured by alcohol, not mine. But on Livingston's, attacking play, obviously finding themselves going up 1-0 very early in the game, I was very impressed by both Bruce Anderson, probably the most impressed I've been in terms of his hold-up play, because we saw at times when he was a lone striker at Aberdeen, he very much struggled with that side of his game. And I thought up against the likes of Bates and McCrory, I thought those two would be able to dominate and keep him quiet, much like they did when Livingston came to Pittodrie in December, but not to be the case. Anderson was very much enjoying his afternoon, and Alan Forrest seemed to strike fear into our backline every time he ran towards our goal.
Sign him up, ? Alan Forrest, not Bruce Anderson.
Well, Alan Forrest is, of course, out of contract with Livingston at the end of the season.
Probably take. But I was impressed with Bruce Anderson. It does have to be said. It's caused a lot of problems, and in terms of not only physicality, but bringing other players into play, as you say, allowing space for the other two forward players, Marano and Forrest. And I mean, Bruce Anderson was probably gutted that it wasn't his goal. His celebration might have been interesting, but it's just frustrating, especially when you see, our lack of options up front once again, that we didn't manage to keep a hold of him and he elected to go to Livingston. It seems to be paying off for him. Yeah, well, I mean,
I don't think we did fail to hold on to him. Obviously, he rejected the contract offer that we put on the table for him. And, as I've said on this show and State of Scottish Football before, that Bruce Anderson is a player that just wants to play football, and he was obviously not going to be guaranteed that game time at Pittodrie, and he's certainly come back to haunt us a couple of times in our trips to West Lothian this season. But as you said, Callum, an absolute Stonewall penalty appeal turned down somehow as Nicky Devlin wrapped his arms around the top of Lewis Ferguson, hauling him to the ground. Kevin Clancy claiming there was too many bodies in the way to prevent him seeing that. But if he can't see that, surely the fourth official, let alone the linesman, should be seeing that.
Yep, certainly just another clear display of incompetency. About as Stonewall as they come. If Devlin doesn't bring him down, it's not as if he's thrown himself to the ground either. He has been brought down. Then Ferguson gets his head to the ball and we have a chance. Just frustrating again. How bad are the officials in this country?
Yeah, and the thing is, I went back and actually watched that we tweeted the video out on our Twitter account at RTG_podcast. And I watched the highlight from behind the goal of that penalty incident. I think there's only 2 players jostling for position between Clancy and Ferguson. And I think he's still, from that camera angle behind the goal, he does have a very good, he's almost looking straight at it. He's certainly looking where the ball's coming in from. So unless he's daydreaming or just, as you say, incompetent, because it's not the first time he's turned down a penalty appeal for Aberdeen in recent weeks, and not for the first time he's had a pretty feeble excuse as to why he's not awarded it.
Exactly. There's no excuse for missing that between him and the other officials, as you mentioned. It's just so poor and very, very frustrating. Obviously, if we get that penalty score, then we're straight back into the game. We've then got a platform to go and maybe win the game. Not saying we definitely would have, going off the basis of things, but it's a better chance to. And
absolutely. And I think that's a really fair point you make, Callum. We don't want to sound like that decision cost us the game, because, to be honest, we did absolutely fuck all in that first half, despite having 75% of the possession. Terrible. Dave Cormack will be absolutely buzzing once again off the data from that match. I think it was another 17 shots we had on goal. But once again, it doesn't matter how much we keep the ball and do pretty passes. It's what we actually do in terms of the final third. Mm-hmm. And it was very much lacking. To be fair, the first half, the conditions probably didn't allow a nice free-flowing style of football to be played. And I think Livingston definitely handled that conditions better. Again, probably used to the ball zipping around off that surface more so than Aberdeen. But even then, they probably created the better chances, caused us more problems than we did, whether or not we were still fuming from that penalty decision. But yeah, we just looked devoid of any sort of ideas going forward in that first half.
Well, you mentioned the surface that should have allowed for, zipping the passes. The amount of times there was a couple under-hit passes that were just atrocious. No excuse for that. The performance was genuinely terrible. I can think of 2 that stick out in my mind. Hayes from left back trying to play it across, and it was just so slack, and then they nip in and get the ball. And then another one, I think in the second half, maybe Funso Ojo. I think it was the first half. Funso Ojo giving it away as well. It's just so poor, and I know there's no excuses for that kind of thing we can say about the conditions or whatever. Just fire the ball. Make sure it gets across to your teammate.
Yeah, and to be honest, that first half was pretty much summed up by that free kick routine right on half-time with Johnny Hayes and Calvin Ramsey. I don't know what the 2 of them were thinking, but it just pretty much summed up our last few games in general.
Yep, it was abysmal. And I think I remember Hayes yelling at Ramsey afterwards, because I think he's meant to touch it in front of Hayes, but he barely scuffs it, and it was just awful. And then Hayes balloons it over.
Yeah, and Calum, obviously being at the game as well, as I said, when I was watching the game at home, you could hear some of the audible chants from the away end of their sort of displeasure at the performance. It was quite clear about half an hour into the game. What was the feeling amongst the crowd at halftime in that away end?
It wasn't a good one, I'll say that much. It did get a little bit toxic towards the manager, I'll say that much. But I think in those kind of games, given the circumstances, that's probably expected at times. But also, I will mention, at the same time, when the players are out there, they must have some sort of onus on themselves as well to take a hold of the game. And also those above who put Stephen Glass in charge, whether you think he's the right man or not up for the job, he was given the job. He was put in place by those above him. They've not backed him properly in January, it would seem. And it falls with them, essentially, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll kind of come on to the manager and hierarchy towards the end. But at halftime, it was definitely change was needed, something to kind of spark us into life. And Stephen Glass deemed that substitution was Jack McKenzie to come on for, as we said, the largely anonymous Teddy Jenks in midfield. However, Aberdeen did not come out the traps flying into the second half. It was in fact Livingston catching Aberdeen very much cold 3 minutes into the second half, as Alan Forrest, latching on to some what can only be described as utterly atrocious, if not schoolboy defending from the Aberdeen back four to finish really well, lofting the ball over Gary Woods into the opposite side of the net to put the home side 2-0 up. And Calum, 48 minutes into the game, 2-0 down to Livingston. I just felt like closing the laptop. I didn't see any way Aberdeen were getting back into that game to score one, let alone two at that point.
Certainly, I remember seeing a lot of bodies leaving the ground at the time. But okay, at the time we thought maybe that was offside for that goal. And having seen it back, I still think it's maybe contentious. But regardless of that, you've got McCrory stepping up. Don't even know where the left back is. And then you've got Bates and Ramsey both pointing. What are they pointing at? Nobody knows. And they're deeper than McCrory. The defensive line is absolutely abysmal. And I'll say this now, get Andy Considine back in there as soon as possible. Because my God, that was a disaster.
Yeah, the defensive line, I quoted it on my personal Twitter account, and I know it'd been doing the rounds on social media, certainly late on Sunday evening. It is disgraceful, that back line. I know Jack McKenzie's only been on the pitch for 3 minutes, but why he is that far up the pitch, he's allowed the ball over the top to come down and Montano to win it, and he's chased the ball and found himself miles out of position. As you said, David Bates, for some reason or other, despite obviously being able to see the play, is our furthest sitting back defender. Ross McCrory is looking at the ball and is sitting in no man's land. There's nobody around him. Alan Forrest is in fact behind him. Again, you'd have thought David Bates would be able to kind of see that out, his right hand side. And then to, even more glaringly, you've got Calvin Ramsey in the right back position, pointing at Alan Forrest, and he's either shouting to Ross McCrory to be like, look, there's a man behind you, but Ross McCrory is probably about 5 yards in front of Alan Forrest. So even if he was made aware, Ross McCrory, he is quick, but he's not catching Alan Forrest on that with that advantage that he's got. It just is such a bad look, and once again goes back to the point that I've made and we've made countless times. It's just another soft goal to concede from an Aberdeen point of view.
Certainly, and Rob McLean said to Stephen Glassfield, we're asking you the same questions, we're giving you the same answers. Well, that's because they keep putting out the same terrible performance. And I feel like we're doing the exact same podcast again and again. Yeah. It's just such soft schoolboy errors that are costing us. And you wonder where it's going to end.
Well, or when it's going to end in terms of a P45. But on that Glass comments, actually, I'm also fed up of him saying in his post-match conferences, well, we've not exactly lost any grounds because the teams above us haven't, they haven't won their game. I couldn't, excuse my French here, but I couldn't give a fuck what Motherwell and Hibs are doing. If they're not winning, we've got to be taking advantage of them dropping points. But right now, we're not. And we, Livingston with that win at the weekend have drawn level on points with us. St Mirren with their win over Hibs have drawn level on points of us. Ross County find themselves 3 points behind us as well. Yes, we're 4 points with a game in hand off of fourth place, but equally, we're 3 points off 10th in the table. And, we didn't give the manager the backing in the January transfer window, as you've alluded to there earlier. We've almost kind of just sensed that we've given up any aspirations of a top six, let alone a top four finish. Certainly when you see the sort of performances we're putting in away from home.
It is abysmal. And okay, yeah, we're all 4 points off fourth now, or whatever it is. But how long has that been the case? It's almost the same as last season, where us and Hibs were just going, do you want to finish third? Do you want to finish? Nobody's taking if anyone starts playing well out of them, then fourth is theirs, regardless, because everyone else is just being absolutely terrible, no consistency whatsoever. And it's so frustrating that we're not taking the onus on ourselves. And look, fourth is there to get that European football. And with experience and quality in our squad, it makes it even more frustrating. Yeah, I wonder how many times I've said frustrating, not only this podcast, but this season. I mean, it's just so annoying. I was about to say it again.
You were about to say it again, weren't you?
I was actually really annoying.
I was actually going to say it's more concerning because it's the same topics we're speaking about week in, week out on this podcast. And the fact that us as fans can see it week in, week out, and it feels to us that it's not being addressed either on the training park. And if it is being addressed on the training park, then is it a mentality problem that when the players go to an away game, because it's, let's be honest, it seems to be more so away from home that we turn in these shambolic performances. Is there that sort of mental block away from home that these players cannot cope with this season for one reason or another? But it's getting to the stage where it's being quite simply unacceptable from the players. As you said, they've got their own responsibility to take for these poor performances. But for me, unacceptable from both the players on the pitch, but also in that dugout as well. It's, apathy, delusion has been words that were bandied around at the weekend. And I think it's fair to say that those are feelings that are beginning to creep into large amounts of the Aberdeen support. It's only February as well. You can't have that this early on in the season.
We have less than half of Celtic's points right now. That is quite terrifying. And you mentioned, players not taking that responsibility, etc. And that was visible. We've got to cover the second half yet, but the rest of the second half, that was visible at full time when Adam Montgomery, been here 2 minutes, goes over to the away end, and I think he gave away his shirt as well. Johnny Hayes, another one, who was overheard by Goose, if you're listening, shout out, to say that he knows it was effing poo-poo. He knows it was that bad. So, but other than that, you've got McCrory, who stood and sort of looked at the way end, and Ramirez as well, who did the same thing. The rest of them, you've got Brown, Glass, Apollo, Russell, whoever in the dugout, all scurrying off straight down the tunnel. Come over. The fans have just travelled down to the central belt. They do so every second week to give their support to the team, and they don't come over and accept the responsibility that they were absolutely terrible and show the appreciation to the fans. And for me, that was probably more frustrating than the actual game. Be a man, come over and accept it. Give us some sort of something back.
Yeah,
it didn't happen. And bloody 19-year-old Montgomery on loan from Celtic and Johnny Hayes, basically the only two really did it.
Yeah, and it's not good enough. And what also wasn't good enough was the reaction to that second goal. We were like rabbits caught in a headlight. And if it hadn't been for Gary Wood, yes, probably not the most confidence-inspiring display from the stand-in goalkeeper. But had it not been for his fingertips denying Jason Holt that curling effort, we would have found ourselves 3-0 down after 50 minutes and in a lot more world of pain than we already were.
Couldn't argue with it either, could you?
No, you couldn't. No. And it would have been no more than Livingston deserved for, getting in our faces and, causing us that problems. They saw the weaknesses in our team and exploited it to a man. And, as we said at the top of the show, you can't deny them that victory was deserved. Even Stefan Omienga in that second half as well, for a player that was on a booking so early, the way he danced through our team at times was hugely frustrating as an Aberdeen fan watching it. But also frustrating is it's that sort of player that we're badly missing in our side.
Yeah, certainly. I was very, very impressed with Omiong amongst others. You could probably go through the Livingston team and say that about all of them. But yeah, it is really, really frustrating. He sort of, and Holt as well, at times taking the game by the scruff of the neck when they needed to try and make things happen, also showing the grit that they needed in the middle of the park. And it's just something we're lacking game on game when we're on the road.
Yeah, unfortunately, that grit that we're kind of used to in the middle of the park was sitting on the bench being rested for, I'm assuming the game on Wednesday night. Hopefully he doesn't pick up his usual cramp now that he's had that 90 minutes of rest. But it did take till later on in the game for Aberdeen to show a bit of impetus, and it was actually the introduction of Matty Kennedy coming on for young Calvin Ramsey after the hour mark. There seems to be kind of the usual substitution just now. And to be fair to the Northern Irishman, he actually had quite a good impact on the game, providing the cross that led to what was a wonderful finish from Christian Ramirez.
Yep, certainly. We did sort of go to three at the back with sort of McKenzie tucking in and just allowing sort of the wing backs or midfielders to bomb on. And certainly Matty Kennedy did do that and causing problems. And I think Bisawin as well had a couple good balls into the box as well when he was allowed to get up in a support of Christian Ramirez a lot more. And he took it brilliantly on that left foot. And I thought maybe at that time, I might have a chance to get a score draw, the best result in football. Alas, no.
Yeah, it wasn't to be, Desmond. But on the introduction of Matty Kennedy, just you mentioned Bazau in there, it allowed him to be pushed further forward, and we saw that kind of flair and creativity that he can bring. Obviously, with that ball that he set up jet, which we'll come on to, getting cleared off the line. I got a lot of flack on social media and during the live last week for my comments on Bazowin after the Ross County game. What was your overall take? 'Cause that's obviously your first experience of seeing him live. I think again for me watching that game, he looked good in the first half, but like many in that forward area, became largely anonymous for a spell in that second half until actually the introduction of Matty Kennedy allowed him more of a free role in behind Christian Ramirez.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I was very excited to see our little muscle boy in person, has to be said. At times in the first half, certainly linked up quite well with Calvin Ramsey when they did get down that side. At the same time, I was quite impressed with him, as basically with those moments you highlighted. Also, what more can you expect when he's just surrounded by absolute dross, it seemed like. I very much enjoyed when he threw the ball off Nicky Devlin's arm.
Brilliant way of disguising his foul throw, I must admit.
Oh yeah, I did notice that as well, but still enjoyed it regardless. I mean, no one can really take a throw in these days, and that's another gripe that I have, more of my many. And also, he showed a little bit of shithousing, for lack of a better word, and with the red card a few other times as well, getting very agitated. Which I quite liked to see, a little bit of fight when otherwise it was severely lacking in that team.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to, you said there was a severe lack of grit and fight. Well, he certainly showed that in that red card incident. I don't know what was the B under Bruce Anderson's bonnet there to deserve that reaction on Bazowin, because it almost helped him up.
Bazowin, he did shout a little bit in his face. And in a game where Bruce Anderson probably been riled up and got a lot of abuse, fair enough reaction. But then for Morano to get sent off for basically just being there, and it was a bit mental. Certainly
brushing his shoulders, he collapsed after he'd been sniped. It was certainly very theatrical for Vicente. But if we see the same again on Wednesday and it leads to another red card for a Celtic player, hey, look, we're probably not going to be complaining. But on Christian Ramirez, the king of USA, it's his 13th goal of the season. Callum, where would we be without him?
11th probably. It's only a 10 points difference. Shows what happens when you do give him service. Unfortunately, we've not done that nearly enough this season. And then when that's not happening, we don't have anyone else to turn to. So that's a pretty scathing indictment of where we are just now. But he took the goal very, very well. At times, his hold-up play maybe leaving something to be desired. But he's got to try things when there's no one else creating for him, I guess.
Yeah, look, it's been an issue that we've identified many times on this show, and I think a lot of Aberdeen fans feel the same. Christian Ramirez is not a lone striker. He needs somebody up there. I think the hold-up play that you allude to there was quite apparent, especially in Paisley. It left a lot to be desired. Joel Sked from View from the Terrace, he tweeted out during that first half that Ramirez's XG in the last 6 games had been under 1. That's how poor our attacking play had been, and I think also emphasises the need for a striker. Stephen Glass saying that he is exploiting or looking to exploit the free transfer market. I know you made a shout out to Robert Snodgrass during our last episode, Colin, but it's almost there is a need for another striker at the club, isn't there?
Certainly. Also, I'll let anyone know that's not a massive nerd like me going XG expected goals. So the fact he's even managed to get 1 when he's not expected to get 1 is quite impressive. So well done, Christian Ramirez. In terms of the free agency, as much as I'd like to see us, go and sign some players just for a little bit of excitement, if nothing else, they're also probably not even going to be up to fitness, up to sharpness. Probably the fact they're free agent, they've either been out of contract since summer or they've been recently released because they've not been featuring, essentially. See Robert Snodgrass. And it's quite bad that this is where we are now, considering we just had a month to try and sign someone. So, and we didn't really do that. So That's good. I just want Dante Polvara to be fit as soon as possible, just for excitement, if nothing else.
But also, what's also more apparent then as well, for a chairman that absolutely loves the data, when you look at what Ramirez's XG has been for that last 6 games, it was almost apparent, staring Dave in his data face, that we needed a creative player and or a striker to help get us some more goals.
Well, anyone who's watched Aberdeen at all this season could have told you that it was needed. Whether that's just someone in support of Ramirez or another option, at least one should have been signed. And I'm not really sure what Dave's been doing, maybe getting his teeth done again, but clearly not good enough. And it's baffling that we've come out of that transfer window having gotten rid of McGinn and Hedges, brought in Besserwin, and even if we didn't get rid of McGinn and Hedges, you probably could have done with someone else in there. So yeah. It's not great at all.
No, it's not great, especially when obviously Connor Barron's been out with injury, Connor McLennan as well. Well, not in the squad again at the weekend. Assume an injury that he's picked up. Yet again, more attacking players that we're once again without. It's not like Matt Kennedy's had the best, injury record during his time at Aberdeen. We're getting a bit reliant and being a bit threadbare in that area. But yeah, I'm sure Dave's got his mind on the summer already. Well, actually, I'm sure he'll be over in a few weeks. It'll be interesting to see. He doesn't often do written press. I know that for a fact from speaking to my friends in the press. Dave Cormack will only do approved press from Aberdeen, and then again, it's solicited questions only. So I'm sure there's plenty of people with some harsh questions wanting to, put them Dave Cormack's way. Once again, Dave, you know where we are.
That'll never happen.
It won't, but he certainly will be keeping an eye on social media with the amount of times he's tagged in, and if he's getting his teeth done, I'm sure we could send him a couple of rowies his way. That might entice him on the show.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, of course, God knows how that would go, but it'd be fun.
It would be fun, but any excuse to show off those pearly whites, I'm sure. But Callum, as I said, we did get ourselves back into that game through Christian Ramirez, and it did kind of spur us on to an extent. Some incessant pressure in the closing stages. But it took till the closing stages to realise that if we whipped balls into Livingston's box, it could cause problems.
For the most part, I know it's mental, really is, isn't it? For the most part, I do recall Vicente Besserwin putting some very good crosses, as mentioned, the one for Jet. But why is it taking us until sort of 75th, 80th minute before these things happen?
Yeah.
It seems ridiculous. We should be going out at them like that from the get-go, and it's taking that long for us to get bodies up to support of Ramirez and balls into the box. And how many times has that been the case this season again? We're just not learning anything, it would seem. I'm learning that Aberdeen are incompetent, so that's good. Yeah,
and that's the worrying thing. We're not learning. And unlike Aberdeen, I think we have to commend the way Livingston held on in the end. Max Strycek almost on a personal vendetta to make up for the mistake he made in the first encounter between the sides this season. Pulled off a stunning save from Lewis Ferguson. His header, I felt goal-bound, but somehow clawed out and commanding his area really well. A couple of balls where he punched clear. I know the Livi commentary team were adamant that they were fouls on the keeper, but I just thought there was some really good 50-50 battles that Max kind of dominated his area. And the one time that we did manage to beat him, Fitzwater was there on the line to deny J. Emmanuel Thomas, and you just know that when that happens, it's not going to be our day in getting a point.
Certainly. You've no idea how much I would have loved J. Emmanuel Thomas getting us a score draw at Almond Vale, but unfortunately, that wasn't to be the case. But as you say, credit has to be given to Livingston, both Strycek on several occasions, and then Fitzwater at that time, putting his body on the line, right there, right place at the right time. And yeah, as you said, it's just, when that happened, you just thought, we're not getting an equaliser in this game.
Not at all. They were standing up and making themselves counted for, something that's been severely lacking in our defence in recent times. But the pressure now mounts on Stephen Glass and equally Dave Cormack from the social media outpouring. Our next 4 fixtures are Celtic at home, Motherwell away in the Cup, followed by St Johnstone at home and Motherwell away again. Even the fixture list is laughing at us, Colin.
Very good.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm sure everyone has their thoughts on Stephen Glass, etc. This upcoming month, very, very important. If you'll even see to the end of the month, who knows? But there's still the questions above him that are the main issues for me. He's in the position now where he's Aberdeen manager. He was put there by those above him. He's not been helped by those above him in terms of recruitment. It's just not good enough, really. And then all of a sudden, when things aren't going well, it's silence from Mr. Cormack on social media, etc. As soon as we get any half decent result, I'm sure he'll be back out.
Yeah, so much for that transparency that he promised us. But do you think, we both said kind of earlier in the season when we went through that previous spell when Stephen Glass was under pressure last time, we both probably shared the belief that he would be here until the end of the season. Do you still feel that now?
I do to a degree. I feel like unless things basically go absolutely abysmally, and that's talking like several just consecutive defeats in terrible fashion, and I feel like he probably will be here until at least the end of the season, and then it wouldn't surprise me. I suppose it is
there's a rolling contract, isn't it?
The fact that means it would be easy for us to go and then get someone else, but at the same time, do I trust those in charge to actually make a good appointment? Probably not, and we wouldn't be surprised if he got another year and another transfer window to try and make things happen.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of been muted in the background, that Dave Cormack wants to give him another transfer window in the summer to really build and implement his own squad. But for me, I think with the outpouring of emotion that we saw, you'll have seen in the stands on Saturday, and I certainly saw, and it's certainly been the case on social media over the weekend, I think if we were to get packed out the cup in quite similar fashion or a poor fashion, that then could be too much. But again, will Dave Cormack's ego allow him to select who, of course, he deemed the outstanding candidate, let's not forget, after what was a rigorous process? Dave, I am quoting you here. That was your words on the process for appointing your outstanding candidate. But Callum, it is going to be the case that, with this whole prestigious game coming up at the end of the month, the Dundee United game, Sir Alex Ferguson coming to town, he's going to be bored stiff during that game at this rate.
First of all, I'd like to mention you are on form today, Glenn. Unbelievable from you, but also
this is very cathartic, I have to say.
I know. Look at you go. I mean, Ferguson obviously previously once phoned up then Dundee United manager Jim McLean saying, I need you and you need me. And then look how far we've come. It's going to be an absolutely awful game. We've seen both the games against Dundee United so far this season. Absolutely abysmal, and I always feel sorry for him. You'd like to think maybe with a big crowd, a big day, special occasion, the players will, if they're not already aware, be made aware of what it means to everyone. That's basically what I'm holding on to, because regardless of our form or whatever into the game, I'm not confident. So I'm hoping the crowd will maybe push them on. Yeah,
well, fingers crossed, but certainly pressure will certainly be mounting. And, if Stephen Glass was hoping that pressure would ease, I'm sure Celtic would not be the fixture he would be hoping for of the team next coming to Pittodrie, Colin.
Certainly not. Basically, everyone's last choice that they'd face. In fact, no, everyone's last choice that they face in the league right now. Not getting any easier. They are on scarily good form, and we are, nothing short of a shambles at the back. So that's good.
It is. It's not good at all. But something that may appeal to those of you going to Pittodrie on Wednesday night is, of course, Big Manny's Pizza. The New York style pizza company opened a new branch on Pittodrie Street a couple of weeks back, and they are offering 9-inch New York style pizzas in the form of margherita and pepperoni for just the price of $6.95. They can be ordered online or via the Big Manny's Pizza app. And if you order 20 minutes before full time, your pizza will be ready for collection. So why not, if you are feeling a bit peckish for pre-match or want to treat yourself after the game, check out the guys at Big Manny's Pizza. For Calum, I know you've had it, I've had it. Probably the best pizza in Aberdeen.
I feel like it would be a good way to cheer yourself up after what is almost guaranteed to be at Pittodrie worryingly bad 90 minutes.
And for the thoughts on a worryingly bad 90 minutes at Pittodrie, we have once again been joined by a Celtic State of Mind contributor, Colin Watt. Well, Colin, we're trying to remain positive after that first half of the show. Welcome back to Red Tinted Glasses. You'll definitely be in a positive mood after the last 8 days for Celtic.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have went much better at all. I'm in a positive mood. Hopefully I can pass it on to you guys, because you guys need to turn a corner quick. Maybe not on Wednesday night, but there's some other interesting games you've got coming up soon that could be doing with you guys picking up some points. So yeah, let's get the power of positivity through this next half hour or so.
Well, there's no time like the present, Calum, but as I said, Celtic have gone this last eight days scoring 8 goals, none conceded. They haven't lost an away game since they lost to Livingston, as Colin told us pre-recording. But Calum, our home record since that defeat, we've actually not, we've only lost to Motherwell at home since that day. So actually, should we be as fearful as many on social media, including both of ourselves, seem to be?
Yes, we should be as fearful. I've seen just absolutely smashed Motherwell, smashed Rangers. I mean, 9-0, Colin, we're going to repeat that again. I am in no way confident whatsoever. The only slight thing is we'll raise our game, and then that'll probably annoy me after, because we'll raise our game and then lose to Motherwell in the Cup in drastic fashion.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those frustrations. I watched the Old Firm game. I saw parts of the game yesterday, Colin. I know you were there. Mm-hmm. How did you feel that game went yesterday? Because obviously when you've come off that high, going top of the league after beating Rangers, you're probably looking at backing that up. Mm-hmm. And I had Celtic on my coupon, and I thought when it got half an hour in and you thought, they've still not scored, but then bang, bang, the game's quickly over. Was it another measured performance in that first half?
I think you've got to remember there's a lot of games coming up with such still. Celtic still have quite a small squad in terms of who they can turn to at the minute. And I know, Calum, I know what you're thinking, right? But when you look at it, Celtic have sort of filled the bench with some younger players, some players who probably will never get minutes for Celtic, or have had very little minutes for Celtic this season. Guys like McCarthy, Ben Doak at 16 years old coming on against Rangers. So it's always been sort of the same back four, the same middle three, the same front three. And there's been times where they've not been able to change it. And what you see is when Celtic do change it, then the intensity drops. So you saw it against Rangers the other day, 3-0 up, second half, it was much a more even game in the second half because Celtic made the changes. They sort of went into neutral mode. They didn't have to get into first gear. They stayed in neutral, saw the game out, and then they go again on Sunday. Again, 3-0 up at half-time. I went to the toilets at half-time and somebody just came in and says, well, we just beat every team 3-0 at half-time, the way that we're going. And that's the way the confidence is getting amongst the Celtic fans at the minute. The only thing that was a bit more pleasing in the second half yesterday than on Wednesday night was that Celtic actually kept going. Obviously getting the fourth goal, they should have had 5, 6, 7 the way that it was going on Sunday, and hopefully that won't come back to bite us later on in the season if it ever goes down to something like goal difference. But there's certainly a momentum going at the minute. Quite a few of the players are still getting up to speed. We're still getting some players back from injury. I think once you see this Celtic side with a full squad and a full squad that's fit and firing, then it could be potentially quite dangerous because you've got guys like Rio Hatate who Ange just came out and says, yeah, we're still getting him up to fitness. Now, this is a guy that scored 3 goals in 5 games. I think he's got 3 assists as well. That's not bad going for someone who's apparently not fit.
Mm. And Calum, I can see the faces you're making as Colin's speaking through here. It's beggars belief, we're looking at this as outsiders at how dominant Celtic have been over recent weeks and how they're cruising past teams. And to be honest, Calum, we'd both admit it'd be no real surprise if we found ourselves 3-0 down at half-time on Wednesday either. But it's just mental. Like it just really does instill that fear factor. Some of that stuff that Colin's saying, if some of these players aren't fully fit. And they've also had the luxury they benched Jota, Juranovic, and gave them just brief minutes so that they have got that little bit of match sharpness in their legs coming into Wednesday night.
Bloody complaining about not having a good squad, a big, deep enough squad, and we've got Adam Montgomery on loan from years playing. I mean, it's not great. It's terrifying with those words from Colin that they're not quite up to fitness yet. And also, I mean, our defending, regardless of who we're playing, we could ship a couple of goals. And then when you've got Celtic playing the way they are, I really am worried about how bad this is going to be. As I said, my only hope is that we might actually raise our game slightly. But even then, we've seen that at times against Parkhead, against Celtic at Parkhead or at Pittodrie. We'll start well, 20 minutes, half an hour, and then they'll get one, and then we'll just capitulate. How many times have we seen that over the years? Far
too many. And, we were saying before we started recording this segment with Colin that we've not beaten either Rangers or Celtic at Pittodrie since that James Maddison free kick back in 2016. But Calum, when Celtic last came to Pittodrie, we spoke about the importance of Aberdeen starting on the front foot and taking the game to Celtic. We didn't do that. It probably took us about 35, 40 minutes to get into the game. And that was, I think, we'll get Colin's opinion on this, but I think a totally different Celtic side to the one we're, coming to face on Wednesday. I really don't think we can afford to be the way we did the last time Celtic came to town, or we will quite easily find ourselves a couple goals down at very worst after half an hour.
Well, yeah, certainly. I mean, you saw how slowly we came out of the box against Livingston, and they still punished us. So it is very, very important to start well. I mean, presume Scott Brown will come back into the starting 11. Hopefully, he can have the sort of impact we would like. Hopefully, he won't go off with cramp after being rested at the weekend. That would be even more convenient, given the last two times he's went off against Celtic. Tinfoil hat on, just saying. But it's vitally important, and you're looking at sort of other players, Johnny Hayes, maybe one of the very few with pass marks from the past weekend, to step up to the occasion. Christian Ramirez, another one. Chances probably won't be, they'll be probably few and far between against Celtic. We need him to be clinical and take them when they come.
Yeah, well, we saw Christian Ramirez be clinical when the chance fell to him at the weekend. I like how you failed to mention what you WhatsApped me earlier, that you wouldn't be surprised if Scott Brown did come off with cramp because you'd be chasing the Celtic midfield like a lost puppy. Mm-hmm. But Colin, is it fair to say this Celtic team is a completely new team than the one we faced earlier in the season at Pittodrie?
I think it's probably fair to say that, yeah. I mean, you look at that team that lined up at Pittodrie that night, and the sort of focal point was Kyogo, because he was the man that was in form at that point. Mm-hmm. Jota still hadn't scored. Abada was sort of hot and cold, although we can speak more about his form recently, which is extremely frightening, especially for someone who's only just turned 20. You just think how good he could potentially come in the next couple of years. But now on Wednesday night, I would fully expect Celtic to go with Georgios Giakoumakis through the middle. And I think Celtic fans are now understanding that although he scored 29 goals for VVV Venlo last season, what he offers to this team is pivotal in the way that Celtic and their forward line want to play, because when you had Kyogo up front, the ball would come in low, beyond the defender, round the side into Kyogo, and he would put it in the back of the net. You saw that's how we got the goal at Pittodrie last time, getting across David Bates. This side on Wednesday night, what you'll see is whoever lines up at centre half for Aberdeen, whether it be McGregor, whether it be I'm not even sure who's playing in there at the minute because of injuries. They're going to have a big physical battle with Giakoumakis on Wednesday night, and we saw Mugabe have that exact same battle with him yesterday at Fir Park, and to me he's very, very similar without the goal scoring return to Lyndon Dykes. He's someone who gets himself about, creates a lot of space for the players to get in behind them. You saw the space on Wednesday night against Rangers that Hatate was given because the other centre half was too focused on where Giakoumakis was moving to, and Hatate had the space and the range of Celtic Park to put it beyond Alan McGregor. Tom Rogic had the exact same space on Sunday. It's a totally different approach, and what it does show is that Celtic can play with the same team, with the same formation, but to two different styles. So when you look at the team on paper, you're going, I don't know which way Celtic's going to play today. Even though you've got the big powerhouse up front, is he going to be one that sort of gets in behind to try and nick one in, like he did at Hearts at Tynecastle? Or is he just going to be the big sort of bulldozing forward that holds everything up and brings everyone else into play? And that must be quite worrying for other teams, because over the last couple of years with Celtic, you sort of roughly knew how they were going to play. They had Edward, they had Griffiths, they had players like that, and you sort of knew what their style of football was. It could be any sort of style of football that Celtic adapt on Wednesday night. And it's great to see as a fan, because it's probably getting the results that we maybe wouldn't have got earlier in the season. But for an opposition fan, I guess it must be quite concerning just to say, well, we'll just have to see what Celtic side turn up.
And Calum, concerning is almost definitely the right word from an Aberdeen point of view, because we don't know what to expect. It's a very fearful feeling that most of us have. And to pick up that point that Colin says, is Celtic now have threats throughout the pitch, even in the notes that I'd written. I'm not sure, Colin, is Kyogo going to be fit? No. So he's out, but you've got Rio Hatate, who looked, mightily impressive in that first half at Tynecastle, obviously, strolled the game against Rangers. You've got Maeda, who's come back and he's scored against Hibs and Motherwell. Giacomakis, who was maybe a player that maybe some Celtic fans didn't think was going to have a future at Celtic after that penalty miss against Livingston, but he's now kind of finding form. And also, Colin's not mentioned him yet, but there's no surprise that Tom Rogic turned into bingo, that he turned into the Australian Zidane, or as you called him, the Aussie Iron Robin earlier in WhatsApp.
Well, I mean, we've already seen him cut in onto his left and find the top corner against Motherwell. How long is it going to be before he does that against us? Because he seems to do it every bloody game he plays. Obviously, usually Andy Considine backing off him and not being able to keep up and probably having tired legs. But we'll see who takes that role this time. It is frightening. And then, especially, obviously, Kyogo won't be back for this game, but he can come back in. Ideguchi as well. I mean, it really is worrying, and I don't know how we are going to cope with this. I'd like to see us perhaps change in system, just because right now our defensive is a total shambles. We mentioned the back line for the second Livingston goal. I mean, goodness me, could you imagine if you defend like that against this Celtic side? I'm not looking forward to it one bit, essentially. It could be very, very bad. And I hope I'm not ruining everyone's afternoon or whatever when you're tuning into this with glowing positivity, clearly. Yeah,
those of you that are maybe listening to this on your commute to the game or travelling to the game, I'm sure are probably thinking about turning back and heading home. But Callum, that's the problem. When our defence has been so shambolic, so soft, with Celtic having all these weapons in their arsenal, it does really make you worried. And it's not even just our defence I'm worried about, it's how powder puff we've been in midfield. Yeah. Okay, the game at the weekend's maybe slightly different, missing Scott Brown. I know that the referee, as we mentioned earlier in the show, kind of lost control of that game as well. But really on Wednesday night, we really need to see the likes of Scott Brown, Lewis Ferguson, Dylan McGeoch, even if he's recalled to the starting 11, really step up and kind of stamp their authority on this game. Get those niggly fouls in, try and disrupt Celtic's play as best as possible.
Certainly, and you mentioned Dylan McGeoch there. I think if we are going to get a result, he could be key if he comes back into that starting 11. We've seen him; he does have the ability to sort of control games. I presume Celtic will probably dominate a lot of the ball against us. He's quite good in recycling our possession, just getting really a little bit of calm into the game, which we might need. Certainly, but also we didn't even mention the forward line. Christian Ramirez, he has to be able to hold up the ball, because I know for a lot of the game he's probably going to be isolated. Obviously, he'll probably have Hayes in support of him and Baserwin trying to get close. But Ramirez, he has to be able to hold up. There's a few times against Livingston where he was trying these sort of flicks, these quick, getting rid of the ball quickly to try and make something happen. But there's just no one close enough, no one around him. Yeah. He has to be on his game.
Yeah, I remember him doing similar in Paisley as well, and folk getting genuinely frustrated with what he does. But that's a good point. We saw what Hearts did to Celtic in the last half hour of the game at Tynecastle, Callum, with the high press that they caused Celtic a lot of problems, albeit they're already 2-0 down at that stage. Do you think that's something that Aberdeen might have looked at and think we can maybe exploit Celtic here by adopting a similar sort of tactic?
I think possibly, although Celtic have obviously improved at the back, there maybe is still some sort of defensive weakness. I suppose Colin will let us know about that one a little bit more in depth on that. But I think, well, regardless of who you're playing in this league, if you do trigger that press and cause problems, put them under pressure, then there is a chance. I'm not convinced with Joe Hart with the ball at his feet, maybe. That's another one. But I think if we are going to win the game, that's the way you have to do it. You have to be aggressive. If we sit in against the Celtic side and sit off and let them have the ball, we know what they'll do. They've got the quality to do it, and they will eventually get that breakthrough. We can probably delay it, but it's probably inevitable at some point.
To be honest, for me, looking at this Aberdeen team and the run they've been on at the minute, you take the Edinburgh City game out of it, it's 5 goals in 6 games. And that's, I mean, the last team you want to be facing when that's the kind of run you're playing is Celtic. So I think adopting a high press could come to the benefit, but it could also come as a massive, massive weakness, because Aberdeen's weakness at the minute is their backline. And if you've got the forwards pressing up, all it takes is for a couple of passes out of that defence, and then suddenly you're left 4-on-4 at the back. And if you're left 4-on-4 at the back, as you've said yourselves, the backline seems to crumble. So what you're going to need is a massive performance from the middle of the park, very similar to when Rangers came up a couple of weeks ago. It's going to need to be a sort of a fight more than a match if Aberdeen want to get anything out of it. And the chances that you do create, as Callum says, someone's going to need to take one of them, because if Celtic get 1 or 2, are Aberdeen really going to be able to pick 2 out? It's just this season, I said it last year when we came up against you guys, is finding that guy that's going to score you guys 20 goals a season. And you've not really got anybody like that you can turn to. I mean, you look at it, you've got Ramirez, who's got 9 goals in the league. And then after that, it's Lewis Ferguson with 5. And most of them have been penalties. There is a massive gap. And I really thought that Aberdeen would have tried to close that out in January by bringing in another striker. But it is very frustrating.
So did we.
When was the last time Aberdeen really had a guy that they could say, do you know what, I fancy sticking him on for the first goal scorer because he's proven that he can do it?
Adam Rooney. That's it. That's a sad line. But Callum, I liked how you said you're not confident with Joe Hart with the ball at his feet. I'm not confident with Gary Woods at all. Well, so if Joe Lewis hasn't recovered from his illness come Wednesday, that's going to affect my confidence even further for the game. But Colin, we're speaking about Aberdeen maybe trying to do something and exploiting weaknesses where possible. I put down is the defence Celtic's potential Achilles heel. I know you're not convinced still fully by Carl Starfelt. Maybe that's somewhere that Aberdeen can exploit. But in saying that, it's 3 games and 3 clean sheets for Celtic. So is there still a problem defensively for Celtic?
I mean, when you take a look at it, you take a look at how many shots were on target in those games, and you're probably talking about a handful over those kind of games that you're speaking about. And that is a lot down to the Celtic midfield. You take a look at Hatate, his heat map must be ridiculous. It just must be red all over the park, and that's a guy that apparently isn't fully fit. The introduction of Callum Mcgregor again has been really welcomed as well, because you're talking about guys that recycle the ball really well. Callum McGregor must be one of the best in the league at doing that. And then the sort of inverted fullbacks, which was Celtic's biggest problem at the start of the season, was trying to fully understand that role and trying to get the most out of it. I think that is now starting to flourish, and you're seeing the best of it. Especially you take a look at Celtic's second goal against Rangers, how it all comes from Juranovic playing that inverted fullback role to leave the space for McGregor and Abada on the right-hand side to get the ball into Hatate. So what Aberdeen are... You mentioned Joe Hart in the ball at his feet. When's he made a big mistake? He's not made a mistake that has cost Celtic a goal yet. Maybe not since the European qualifiers back in July. So the biggest thing that Aberdeen, I think, have the chance of scoring from, and it's still something which has dramatically improved since last season, but can still be a weakness for Celtic, is set pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I think if Aberdeen can get some set pieces in and around the box, get some decent deliveries in, you've got guys that are sitting there 6'1", 6'2". Celtic's team isn't the tallest, and that's potentially Aberdeen's best threat. Apart from that, I don't really know. And it sounds pure big-headed, but it's not. I just don't know. You're looking at a team that's only conceded 12 goals in 23 or 24 games. So when you're saying, well, how do you pick a hole in them? It's very difficult to say.
Yeah, and I think set pieces, obviously, that's where Aberdeen got the success last time you came up north, and that's where we got the goal from. It's almost fair, and at the point you said earlier, if Celtic go, 2 goals up, are Aberdeen going to find a way back in it? Calum, I don't know about you at Livingston, if you even stayed till the end of the game at 2-0 or not, but if we find ourselves 2-0 down like we did on Saturday, I had no confidence we were going to grab 2 goals against Livingston, let alone Celtic. And I think that's a concern. We've got to, from an Aberdeen point, stay in the game for as long as possible.
I did, in fact, stay until full time at Livingston, but only due to the fact there was basically no other option to do anything else. So that's why I stayed.
The pub's not so far away, to be fair.
Yeah, but there's the one at the stadium, which I think they shut at 2:30, and then there's the Spoons, and we'd already been cut off there, so that was fun. That's another story for another day. I think in games against Celtic and Rangers, I always feel like get to half time with a clean sheet, whether it's still at 0-0 or if you do manage to be in front, then you've got sort of a pretty decent chance, at least half a chance to go on. Problem is, I don't have much confidence in terms of getting to that halfway mark, but I feel like that is key, and we're going to have to be savvy. And Colin mentioned we might have to turn it into a bit of a battle at times. I don't know if Celtic will be up for it. Who knows? But we saw against Rangers, that's the way we kind of got the better of them quite a lot of the time. And then that sort of gave us a foothold in the game to then go and push on and create things. I think that is the way we might have to do it as well. And you mentioned set pieces though, but my other concern is getting high enough up the park to win a set piece and be sufficient. That's the real issue.
Yeah, well, that was also a concern I had. But in terms of making it a battle, Calum, we obviously saw how much of a shithouse Vicente Bizaouin was against Livingston, getting a couple of their players booked and even sent off as well. But maybe that says more about Kevin Clancy than him as well. We're going to kind of need that sort of behaviour on Wednesday, in a sense, if we're really going to be trying to get anything, try and get, like what we saw exactly against Rangers, wind those the opposition up and try and get the crowd going and get the referee in our favour again. Although I'm not sure if Celtic will be in the same frame of mind and sending 8-page dossiers to the SFA if the refereeing decisions go against them at Pittodrie.
It'll only be 6.
Might only be 6.
No, you make a really good point there, Glenn. What is the crowd what's the attendance looking like for Wednesday night?
I won't be there, I can't imagine.
Can't say. I've checked. I would imagine to be around 15,000, 16,000 off the top of my head.
It is so vitally important, I think, for Aberdeen, if they want to get anything out that, to be as close to a sellout as possible. Because we saw with Scottish referees, and I'm not going to go on a massive rant about referees here, but you all know my opinions on referees. I don't think they're biased. I don't think they favour any team. My opinion is they're just dreadful, absolutely dreadful. I could have said something worse there. They're part-time referees doing a full-time job, and they get paid a very handsome wage to do so, and have no accountability when the decisions go that aren't their way. So see, when it's a 50-50 and they're not sure which way to give it, see whatever way the crowd roars the loudest, I guarantee that's the way they give it. So if you've got a full house at Pittodrie on Wednesday night, and you get the fans behind the team just shouting for everything, you're going to end up getting the odd decision here or there that you probably wouldn't have got any other way. You see that the exact same way when you guys come to Celtic Park. As soon as the crowd shouts for something, 9 times out of 10, the referee's scared not to give it to them. So the fans can be the 12th man, and everyone says, well, how do you be the 12th man? Just shout for everything. That's generally how it works. You can be the sort of leadership role off the park by doing so. You see, it works for guys like Robbie Nielsen It's worked for guys like Neil Lennon. It's worked for guys like Stephen Gerrard when they were up here as well. The louder you shout, the more you get in the referee's face. You get the decisions more often than not.
Yeah, that's fair. But the problem is the team will then also have to keep us on side for any duration of time so that works. However, I do agree in that the fans can't help in the decision making. I was on a throw-in for Aberdeen once, which on the face of it sounds a bit mental, but it was at Pittodrie a very long time ago. The crowds were terrible, and we were down right at the front in the south stand, and I just yelled that it was our throw-in, and then the linesman gave it our way and pointed behind him at me, basically to show that it was my decision, essentially. So there we go. We can have more of that. That would be fantastic. And I'll hold on to that moment dearly. We probably went on to lose the game because we were pretty bad at the time, but who knows?
Callum's just going to be shouting penalty for everything.
Exactly.
Tackle on the halfway line. Penalty!
Exactly.
Penalty!
Exactly.
There's got to be somebody in every ground that probably shouts that regardless of where the decision happens. One player though, Colin, that will not feature for Aberdeen on Wednesday night is Adam Montgomery, the left-sided player, joined the club from Celtic on loan in the January transfer window. I was hoping that you would be able to indulge us into a bit of an insight into Adam and where you think his best position is. Is it at left-back, or do you think he would benefit as a spell maybe further forward up here in Aberdeen?
I know behind the scenes at Celtic, they see him as a left-back. For me, I don't think he has the physicality to play in that position quite yet. Without lowering the tone even more, you saw what happened when he was further forward the last time Celtic came to Pittodrie, because it was his ball that put across for Jota to score his first goal for the club.
He also didn't do his job defensively at the other end of the pitch.
Well, that sort of sums it up, doesn't it? But what I did notice is from the point that Montgomery signed, you've saw almost a rejuvenated Johnny Hayes, and I think it comes down to competition. Now, I'm not saying that Adam Montgomery should be playing week in, week out for Celtic, although I would quite like to see that as a Celtic fan, because if it's going to help his development, etc., etc. But we were speaking about squads earlier on, and Callum was saying, "Oh, well, you guys sent us Adam Montgomery as your fourth choice left back, etc." It adds competition to the squad, and if it gets the best out of the players that's already there, then that can only be seen as a good thing. Now, Montgomery might not get 15 games between now and the end of the season, but what he will do is he'll be further up the pecking order at Aberdeen. If someone picks up an injury, then he's in there to step in. For me, I think his best position is slightly more further forward, because that's the way he came through the youth system. In fact, at one point he was a striker, so who knows, if Ramirez gets injured, you might have to throw him in up there. Probably do a lot better than the big Jet. But
whoa.
Ding, 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 ding. There's a second bell in the day.
Dare you.
Watch him score on Wednesday now.
I'll not even make the squad, surely. Getting him further forward, I think he can take on a full-back pretty well. His deliveries into the box are pretty good. And as I said, it is all about that sort of squad competition. If you can get the best out of the players that's already there, that's something Aberdeen haven't been able to do this season. So the January transfer window, I think, for Aberdeen was partly improving the players that you've got, but also trying to push them on even further by bringing in guys that could potentially come in and steal their space. Why would Johnny Hayes want a 19-year-old boy to come in and replace him? This was meant to be his, and I say this in the most modest way possible, this is his retirement home. This was his mainstay for the last couple of years. This is where he wanted to end his career. He doesn't want to end his career fighting with a 19-year-old for his space. So you saw that it's managed to get the best out of him the last couple of games.
And he's not cup tied, is he? He didn't play against Allowell.
No, he didn't. No.
So it'll be interesting to see if he comes in at the weekend, Motherwell away. Looking ahead now to the game in general on Wednesday, we saw Rangers struggle when they came to Pittodrie. Calum, teams always try and say Pittodrie is a tough place to go. We're doing our best to kind of make it into a fortress this season with the Red Shed. And, our recent home form has maybe shown that, just that one defeat to Motherwell in that run of 8 home games. But Celtic maybe with the view that it's a tough place to go. Callum, we're probably with the view that we're searching for a much needed result. It's also an important game for two teams for two totally different reasons. How important, Callum, is this for the fans, Stephen Glass and Aberdeen in general, that we do get something from the game on Wednesday night?
It's massive. I think with recent results, even before we came into February, we highlighted on this show how big a month this could be for Stephen Glass for the season, regardless, perhaps for the players that are currently on the books too. At the same time, given Celtic's form, I'm not confident, and I guess in some way you could maybe view it as a free hit, but regardless of the result, we need a performance as well. We need to see something that will sort of give us something to hold on to and a reason to believe that we can, go to Motherwell in the cup and get a result and then carry on the form in the league, because we've been so hit and miss. It seems to be few good performances, few bad results, and it's just been a constant cycle so far this season. And it wouldn't surprise me if this is one of the games that we did then go and get a good result in, because that's the way it seems to be going right now for us. And boy, do we need it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It almost wouldn't come as a surprise if we were to get a result the way our inconsistency has been going this season. But, you made that point there. You called it a season-defining month almost for Aberdeen. And now I think it's a season-defining, possibly job-defining 5 days coming up for Stephen Glass, this game against Celtic and Motherwell. Sometimes some people might say these games against Celtic and Rangers are sort of free hits. Well, I'm sorry, when you don't set yourself up going into this game in terms of getting results prior, this isn't a free hit anymore. We've now got to go and take something from it. Livingston and St Mirren, yes, below us in the league table, thanks to goal difference, but both level on points. Ross County could join us if they defeat Livingston on Wednesday night as well. And depending what the score is at Pittodrie, could even go above us. Again, with goal difference. So in that sense of view, yes, we're still only 4 points off of fourth place, but we're quite easily a few results away from dropping down to 10th place in the league. It's such a fine balance. And unfortunately, the games against St Mirren and Ross County just haven't gone. And then Livingston, that's how bad it was. I've already forgotten it. They haven't gone to plan. And we found ourselves in this position where uproar and upset around the management and the playing style is now almost at the forefront, that if things, were to turn really bad on Wednesday night, if we were to find ourselves 3-0 down at half-time, it could be a very toxic place come Saturday, let alone Saturday's cup game. Mm-hmm. But Colin, on the other hand, for Celtic, being so dominant, brushing aside teams with relative ease, is there a risk of maybe complacency coming into question here when they travel to Pittodrie?
I think there always is, but if you ask Ange Postecoglou, the answer will be no. You saw the way that he reacted to that question in the press conferences the last couple of days. I think he said, can I stop repeating myself? I've already answered this. And that his relationship with the Scottish press, regardless of how this season comes out, will be one of the best things to come out of this season. Because it's just a refreshing take from an outsider. But Celtic approach these games as if it's just the 90 minutes. They're not thinking ahead to playing whoever they've got on Saturday or Sunday. They're not thinking of who they've got in Europe coming up. They're not thinking of who's potentially below them. And if the news comes through from Pittodrie that Rangers are 3 or 4 up the same way that they were yesterday against Hearts, you'll not see a change in Postecoglou's setup, even if it's close. With 20 minutes to go, they'll just keep playing the same way. You saw what happened against Dundee United. Basically stuck to the plan, because that is the plan that Celtic have. And to be honest, there's very few teams this season that have been able to stop Celtic's plan once they've been up and running. So complacency is always a risk. Celtic are going to make a couple of changes to the team that played on Sunday, the same way that they made a couple of changes to the team that played on Wednesday. And it's just about making sure that you don't make too many changes that slows the game down or that takes the steam out of things, because we saw Tom Rodgick come into the game yesterday and for the first 15-20 minutes struggling to get up to speed. And then once he did, it was just gold dust. Everything that sort of fell to his feet was going in the back of the net. Abada only had to play 45 minutes yesterday, still got a goal and 2 assists. That's the kind of thing that you would have dreamed of earlier on in the season. I think Celtic will know how important this fixture is. They'll obviously be coming up against Scott Brown and Johnny Hayes and guys that they've played against before, but I don't think that will factor into it. Celtic will start to try and dominate the ball from minute 1 right through to minute 90. If they get a couple of goals in front, you might see them taking the foot off the pedal a bit. But I think this will be a close game, because I do think Aberdeen always raise their game when Celtic come to town. We've seen it time and time again. It must be one of the most frustrating things, not just for Aberdeen fans, but for fans of every team in Scotland. It's like when Celtic come to town, they raise their game, or when Rangers come to town, they raise their game, and then the following week they go and get beat off St Mirren. And no disrespect to St Mirren, but it's just the way kind of things go. And you were pointing out the table there. I had to take a look at it. I didn't realise how close it was between 4th and 10th. Mm-hmm. And that, I mean, we normally see that from the Scottish Championship, and that's not the way that is this season. But it's almost as if it's ascended into the cinch Premiership. Who doesn't love a bit of cinch, by the way? It feels good every time you see the word cinch.
I didn't actually realise how close it was until I was doing the research for the previous segment of the show, the Livingston review, that because I knew they'd drawn level on points with us, but I didn't realise how quickly we could drop to 10th, but how quickly we could also rise, obviously with having that game in hand against St Johnstone a week on Tuesday, how quickly that can also propel us up the table. So this is a really fine balance for Aberdeen and the season coming. Now, Colin indicates there that Celtic likely to make a couple of changes for this game. We'll get his thoughts on that in a second. I think it's fair to say there'll be some changes in that Aberdeen side come Wednesday night. Do you expect it to be at least 2 or 3?
Yeah, I would think so. I personally would like to see a change in system, go to 3 at the back, whether McKenzie's in there on the left-hand side or whatever. But regardless, I don't think that will happen. I do expect probably Scott Brown to come in. Obviously, Montgomery will have to drop out. Hopefully, Mcgregor can come in as well. That would be certainly 2 changes at least. And then maybe Lewis comes back in. Who knows? But it's important, regardless of who's out there, to really be on their game and come out ready for this game like they didn't do against Livingston. They haven't done too many times this season, because, my God, it has been awful. And you mentioned that things can get toxic. I think we saw that against Livingston. The away end, we went 2-0 down, was not a happy place. No. And it could be bad if that's the case again against Celtic, if we do come out with another pathetic performance, let alone result, and then especially going into that cup game against Motherwell, because that could be curtains for the season, basically.
Very, very much so. And I think it's interesting because I would like to see Dylan McGee return to that starting 11 on Wednesday, a player that for me is massively underrated by the Aberdeen support. I don't think he's appreciated enough for what he does in possession. And I think if he was to come in to that starting 11, it would actually allow Lewis Ferguson to push up maybe a little bit further, because there would be no need to have him, McGee, Brown, Ferguson and Ojo all flooding that midfield. Yes, we're speaking about a midfield battle, but they're 4 very similar sort of players. Get one of them up to, try and, as you say, we're not sure where that set pieces are going to come from getting further up the pitch. We need to get that support up to Ramirez, so in turn, he doesn't drop back deep and we don't have that outballer. If we do get beyond the Celtic midfield, there's very little in the way of support further forward.
Is McLennan injured?
I'm
not sure.
So. He wasn't involved.
He's not been involved the last 2 games, but there's been no official word.
I thought he was one of the most impressive players against Rangers. And I think he's someone that could potentially kind of get himself into a bit of a battle if you play him alongside Scott Brown and Ferguson. That could be a tasty midfield 3.
I think that's probably one of the only people that'll have that sort of opinion on young Connor. But I'm interested to see how Vicente Bizawan handles this sort of game. He showed a couple of good tricks and flicks at 2-1 down to set up Jet, whose shot, obviously, as we said earlier, unlucky to be cleared off the line. So see if he can cause Celtic's backline any problems. But Colin, what are the changes that you're expecting Ange to make for Wednesday? Obviously, these aren't the changes, but what you can expect.
No, so I think Josip Juranovic will come back in at right back, and I'm delighted that the Pittodrie crowd will get to hear the fantastic chant for him that has been discovered this season. Everyone loves a bit of Pitbull. I know that Callum loves a bit of Pitbull.
I do love it.
So it was good when that was bouncing around for Park last week. It's in the midfield. I'm unsure what the three will be. I think the two that are guaranteed their place is Hatate and Mcgregor. And then it is a bit of a debate between whether to put in Matt O'Reilly or Tom Rogic. And that comes into how well Matt O'Reilly's found his feet in a Celtic jersey. He was unfortunate to lose it for the game on Sunday. Then Rogic scores 2 goals, and you're thinking, well, it would be very unfortunate if he was to lose his jersey. So it's difficult to see which one of the two. But then that's a great option for Celtic, who necessarily haven't had a strong bench all season. That if you say, well, we're going to take off Rogic, we bring on a guy called Matt O'Reilly, who has settled into Scottish football beautifully. So I'm not sure which one of the two would play there. If you had to ask me, considering his history against Aberdeen, I'd probably go with Rogic. Abada will start on the right, and then it comes to the left-hand side now. On Sunday there, Celtic played Dyson Maeda, and he had a very good first half, moved into the central striker role when Giakoumakis came off. He played very well there as well. But Jota is just one of those players who he lives for occasions like this. And I know Celtic are really monitoring him very closely, not giving him too many minutes because of his injury that he's still coming back from. Whether he'll start on Wednesday night or whether he'll play Maeda for the pace, I'm unsure. If it was me, he's coming up against Calvin Ramsey. We saw what happened last time. I'd have to stick Jota out there. And then up front, again, does he go with Giakoumakis, who's been playing very well? Does he go with Maeda for the pace? It's a difficult decision. But regardless of who you don't pick, they're the options that can come off the bench. Yeah. And with having the 5 subs, I think it will be another thing that probably adds to Celtic strength for this game. So I would go with Giakoumakis, and I think that he can really bring Abada and Jota into the game. Sorry
to interrupt. Did you say 5 subs?
Yeah, 5.
Yeah, you might want to remind Stephen Glass. Say it a little bit louder. Carry on.
Has it not been happening? No.
No.
I looked at the bench there for the Livingston game. There's some really good options. What happened?
I don't know. I don't know if he knows. Genuinely don't know if he knows.
Similar in Dingwall, 5 subs allowed, only made 2. But that's an interesting point on Jota. I fully expected him to start. Not that I was suggesting that he was being rested with the trip to Aberdeen in mind. But yeah, the point that you made on the last time the two teams faced, I know the last time the two teams faced, it was Jack Gurr that was ripped to shreds down that right hand side. But it's been we've made no fact about it's been 4 or 5 goals we've conceded since the restart in January, all coming down that right hand side. Even the free kick on Saturday came in from the right-hand side as well. So it's clearly an area that teams have managed to have success down. Whether that's directly linked to Calvin Ramsey or not, people maybe think we're being a bit harsh on him there, but teams are getting success down that right. You want to have your best players there, and for a lot of people on the outside or fantasy football owners, Jota would be that option.
Definitely, I think Ramsey's a very good player, and I think when we've spoken on this podcast before, I did say that if there was ever a point where Celtic were looking to get a new right back, which I don't think they will now, Calvin Ramsey would be very high up on my list, although I do think the price market at the minute is probably looking more at his potential than what his ability is just now. But yeah, I mean, he's a player I think in the next couple of years we'll definitely see him making that move away from Pittodrie, I'm sorry to say.
I think it's fair, and I think it's a move that many of us expect him to make. But Colin, as ever, it's been an absolute pleasure getting your thoughts ahead of Wednesday's game between Aberdeen and Celtic at Pittodrie. For those of you that are interested or maybe fearful on the back of the preview that we've provided, you can, of course, gamble responsibly on the game. Aberdeen coming in at massive odds of 9-2. Celtic surprisingly at just 11-20. And those that fancy the draw can be found at 29-20. Of course, we do urge you to gamble responsibly on the game. But Colin, as ever, and Calum, thank you very much for your thoughts on the game ahead.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you. That was sad.
Keep that in. Keep that in.
I will.
Well, Calum, that was the thoughts there of Colin. As always, has that helped your confidence for Wednesday?
If anything, it's made it worse, Glenn.
Yep, I think it's hard to disagree with that at all. Well, as always, Calum, thanks very much for your contributions. Colin as well for joining us on the show, and to all of you for listening, watching, subscribing, leaving a like, and of course comments. We will be back on Thursday live once again on our YouTube channel, fearing the worst for that one. Until then, thanks very much for tuning in.
Thank you. I might need a Big Manny's pizza to help cheer me up.